Hey guys, Richard here. I received an email from a fan the other day that I thought I would answer on a video. Hi, I'm 16 years old girl and I'm planning to go as an exchange student as soon as I graduate high school next year. I've been very interested in going to Japan or South Korea, but I just can't make up my mind on which one I should go to. I'm half Bolivian, South America, and I'm half Finnish, Europe, so my skin isn't quite that white. I'm 162 centimeters tall, about 5'2", and for my body, I'm more of a Latina. I wouldn't consider myself overweight, but I'm definitely not that skinny either. I've lived in Finland, Bolivia, and I'm currently living in the USA, and I'm also fluent in Finnish, Spanish, and English. Which of these two countries would you recommend for me? Which one would I get a better experience from, and which do you think would be more accepting towards my physical appearance? I'm a big fan of yours, and I hope that you can help me with my question. First off, Laura, you're gonna get an amazing experience from both countries if you decide to go there as an exchange student, whether it's for 1 semester or 1 year or for even longer. Some of the bigger differences between the two countries that stuck out to me that you might want to consider are food. That's really the big one because you have to eat 2 to 3 times a day, every day, and the cuisines are a little bit different between the two countries. I'm not so certain about how spicy some of the dishes are in Japan, but I can tell you 30 to 40% of all the food in South Korea is pretty spicy, or on the spicier side when you compare it to other cuisine throughout the world. Like if I were to compare, for example, some general types of dishes in the United States versus general types of dishes in Korea, Korea is maybe 2 or 3 times as spicy as many of the foods in the US. In terms of your skin color, I don't think you have nearly as much to worry about from either country as you think. We've talked a lot about this in our videos. I know pretty much all YouTubers who've lived in South Korea have probably brought this up before. Way more than skin color though, I think, is just the fact that when you go out in public there, you're gonna get a lot of people to look at you. And that's simply because you're not Asian. So whether you're super pale or you're of mixed ethnicity or you're a black person or you're Latino, it doesn't really matter as much. When you go out in public, people are just going to look at you more because it's an Asian thing, or at least it was a Korean thing. People like to stare there in a way that's considered acceptable in Korea, but not in our societies. And it's something that never goes away. It's something that you see on a regular basis. Even if you speak fluent Korean, doesn't matter. They're looking at you and they're not talking to you. And it seems like the look is disapproving sometimes. And it very well may be, but it's just a fact of life if you want to go over there. I'm assuming Japan in this way is similar, even though I don't know for sure. We were in Japan a total of 3 days, so I don't really remember that much staring. And we were also in Tokyo part of that time. And in Seoul, people look at you a lot less than they did where we lived in Suwon, which is not in Seoul. I think Seoul at this point has become so international that they're used to all sorts of different people from around the world coming to visit, coming to do business, staying in the hotels. And especially like shop owners and that sort of thing, they're gonna welcome you into their place because they're just looking to make money, because it's a capitalist society over there. I think Japan's the same way. And you don't really know what people are thinking, so whether your skin color is this or that is besides the point, because you might not even talk to people who are looking at you, and therefore you don't know what they're really thinking. Another thing to consider is, what are you majoring in, and what type of school do you want to go to? In my experience, generally speaking, universities in Japan are more difficult for people like me to apply and get into than they are in South Korea. Now, what I'm talking about is the level of standard of education throughout the world that these two countries place themselves in. Every year, Korea tries harder and harder and harder to boost its rankings on the international university scale by having more professors publish articles in journals, in professional education journals, and all these different medical journals throughout the world in order to boost rankings of particular universities in South Korea. Now, this is more behind the scenes stuff, but this is something that Japan has been doing for years and years that Korea is now doing more and more. And what this means is the level of education that you might get in Japan overall is going to be slightly more stringent and higher than in South Korea. And I know this because I've applied to positions at universities in both countries, and Japan's application process is more rigorous for a guy like me, and their standards are higher for hiring professors in Japan versus in South Korea, because, for instance, most Japanese universities, or at least some Japanese universities on the higher level, the ones that pay more and the ones that are harder to get into and the ones that are more prestigious and elite for students to apply and get into, require professors to have a PhD degree. Okay? In South Korea, this is to teach English, by the way. In Korea, they don't require a PhD, they require master's degrees in order to teach English. And so you can see right there that South Korea's standard for professors getting hired is a notch down because they're requiring master's degrees versus PhD. But that being said, it doesn't mean you're going to get a worse education or a lower standard of education in Korea. It really all depends on who your professors are and what your path of studying is. In other words, what you major in. Another thing to consider is how long do you actually plan to be an exchange student in Japan or South Korea? Are you planning to do it for just 1 year, or are you planning to do it for an entire 4 years? Because this makes a big difference in what sort of experience you're going to receive living there. Now, I don't know exactly Japan versus Korea, which one's going to be better, but I do know that they probably have the same thing available in Japan as they do in Korea, in that there are really two types of exchange students that go over to get a university education. The one that goes over for 1 semester or 1 year, and then the student that goes over and does their entire 4 years at one university. The ones that go over for 4 years, by and large, have a much richer and more in-depth experience, not just because they're there for longer, but also because they almost always learn the language fluently. There are also programs, for example, in Korea that you can go over and you can get your classes in English, and then you don't have to worry about learning Korean. And I know that sounds a bit shallow, but these programs do exist. Like, for example, Stephanie did her entire 2-year master's degree program at Kyung Hee University, which, by the way, is ranked in the top 10 universities in South Korea. And it was entirely in English. And I think because it's ranked one of the highest universities, she was able to have a program that was available for her where she didn't have to do all her education study in Korean and write all of her papers in Korean and then write her thesis, which was 6 months worth of work pretty much every day in Korean. She was able to do her research in English and then write her paper in English, and her professors taught in English. And that program is an amazing program because Korea wants to up its game, like I was saying earlier, on the international scale. Korea's sort of got a late start when you compare Korea to Japan because Japan was doing this for longer. Korea's economic development happened later on and more recently, and that's really the only reason why Korea is sort of behind a little bit in terms of university level on an international scale versus Japan. But really, they're offering the same types of education. If you ask me, they're just asking for slightly different standards when it comes to applying as a professor and in turn as a student. Another really important thing to consider is which country is it easier for you to get a visa and how long can you get that visa for? Because I know, for a good example, Brazilians have a problem getting into Korea. I don't know if they have a problem, but there aren't that many Brazilians in Korea versus there are hundreds of thousands of Brazilians in Japan, and that's because I think Japan and Brazil have some sort of visa agreement versus Brazil and South Korea don't. And so what is your passport? What's your nationality? It looks like you have maybe multiple nationalities or multiple dual passport, dual citizenship situation. And in that case, you just want to look into the two countries and see which one is easier in regards of your citizenship. So anyways, I hope that's been helpful for you. I hope you guys enjoyed this slight change in format from the normal daily vlogs. I think I'm going to try and answer some of these more specific questions if they come in through our email, which is linked in the description box, or in the comment section. If you have a legitimate question like this, it doesn't have to just be a comparison between South Korea and Japan. It can be about Korea or Asia or pretty much anything on the vlog channel. Some of the questions that you guys have don't necessarily fit into Like It's. We did something similar about this on a Like It maybe month and a half ago, but it wasn't geared specifically towards exchange students. Click the like button, you guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time. Let's get them out of here. Hasta luego.